Hey, Adair. All right. So I figured I would for people who aren't necessarily as aware of your candidacy for Congress, kind of give you a minute to introduce yourself to everybody on here. I'm getting a few texts from people who are going to be running late, and some who aren't going to be able to make it, but I am recording this meeting. So this will be up on our website for everybody who wasn't able to see it after we're done.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I'm Adair. I'm running for Congress in South Carolina's 2nd Congressional District against Joe Wilson. He's the guy most people remember for yelling out, "You lied" to President Obama from the House floor. The district is mostly the Midlands, Richland, Lexington, Burnham, Aiken, and Orangeburg counties. And so just a little bit about my background. If you don't know me, I grew up in Williston, South Carolina, a T90 town in Barnwell County in the district. Went to Furman on scholarship, later Stanford to law school. I've been a South Carolina public school teacher, a trial attorney at the U.S. Department of Justice. I worked for the federal courts for a federal judge here in South Carolina on some cases that were pretty impactful for me and for the state, including the South Carolina marriage equality case and the trial of Dylan Roof for the massacre at Mother Emanuel. And most recently, a friend of mine and I launched a nonprofit to provide reduced rate, affordable legal services for people that don't qualify for free legal aid, but also can't drop 5 or 10 grand on an attorney. So that's my background. I'm a mom. I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old daughter, both of whom are awesome. I've been a wife of 16 years and really excited about this run. The campaign is going really well. We've broken a lot of records. We are the first Democrat ever to outraise Joe Wilson, and we didn't do it just once. We've done it 5 consecutive times. I'm expecting soon we'll learn we did it a 6th time with this last quarter, which makes this race very different from any prior races because we have had a significant cash advantage that meant we could go up on TV a full month before Wilson got his first ad up, which is a great advantage. We are the first candidate that Emily's List has endorsed in South Carolina in over 15 years, which is purely a testament to how competitive we've made the seat. And so I'm excited for what's to come. Our numbers are good. And we know as long as we can get our message out there and keep making sure more people know about us, we get our name ID up, we can bring this thing home on November 3rd. So I'm really excited about it and appreciate that all of work you guys I know are doing to help Democrats up and down the ballot this cycle. It's going to be, I think, an incredible day for Democrats in South Carolina. And I think on November 4th, we will be the state everyone is talking about. And so I'm really can't wait for it. It's going to be fun.
All right. That's awesome. I'm really looking forward to November 3rd and seeing what Democrats can pull off in this state. It's going to be awesome. So we'll go ahead and get started. So we sent out a form to ask some questions to some people, and some people weren't able to or did not fill out their name on these. So some of these don't have names tied to them, but like this first one. So our first question today is, what are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced running as a woman for office in this state?
Yeah, so we haven't sent a woman to Congress in 30 years in the state of South Carolina. We're very excited to change that. We knew we were going to face some issues. I do get questions on the campaign trail that my male counterparts do not, like, what about your kids? You know, men also have kids. And have parenting duties. So we definitely seen some of that, but we really wanted to flip the script from the beginning and kind of embrace this. And one of the things we've done, you can see with our hashtag #MamUp, which is a play on man up. One of the phrases that I love that came up early in the campaign was like, if you want to get something done, get a mom to do it. We're very practical. We've heard all the excuses, and we juggle a lot of things as moms. And so we've tried very early to try and flip the script on that for us in our race, and that's gone pretty well. But, you know, part of the struggles we've had is more as a Democrat in South Carolina than just being a woman. And it's just, you know, people people nationally and otherwise look at South Carolina and think, oh, it's a red state, and they don't see the changes happening here on the ground. They don't know the numbers that we know or that I know from doing homework on it. And so you have to do a lot of education about what's happening in South Carolina. And frankly, there were people that didn't take us seriously early on. But like after you run circles around an incumbent for a year, people start to go, oh, this is a real race and this is something to watch. So it's been very fun, especially the last few months, where just these national organizations have all come and gotten in and said, like, you can win. I was like, yeah, I've been saying that for a year, thanks. But yeah, that's been, I think, something Democrats in the state have all faced is proving that it's winnable, and it is. So,
which is awesome. That shows that South Carolina is moving in the right direction for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, so now we're going to kind of move. We're going to shift to current events. So it's going to be a little bit of a shift in questions. So as you know, in May, with the killing of George Floyd, we had an uproar in civil protests nationwide and internationally too. It sparked the Black Lives Matter movement support more than ever before. And so a few people, not just one, were wondering, what's your stance on the current situation with Black Lives Matter? And what do you think about the what do you think the current administration could do better in their treatment of the case and resulting in the protests?
Yeah, so much. Definitely supportive of Black Lives Matter. And a lot of my views around race and law enforcement really came from my time at the court. We saw so many racial profiling cases. I was there the summer of Dylan Roof, which was also the summer of Walter Scott, who was an African-American man in Charleston, shot in the back by police officers as he was running away. And so, those cases have definitely affected my view on things. So here's what I think. One, we need body cams everywhere. And one of the reasons I think we have seen such kind of positive public awareness of stuff now in a way that maybe we didn't before is because we have these things on videotape now. And I think you're seeing a lot of people who like to pretend that this wasn't happening going, oh my God, I'm seeing it on video over and over again. This is really happening. So I think that's really important. I think we have to look at our allocation of resources with law enforcement. We need, I don't support defund the police, right? When there are violent crimes happening, we need a police force, but we also need to make sure we have a diverse law enforcement, diverse prosecution, people in power that represent the community that they serve is really important. We need to have things like mental health resources where we have mental health professionals responding to mental health crises and not just people with guns. So there's a lot that we need to do as far as looking at ways to make things better, especially in the realm of law enforcement. And it's one of those questions, like, how many times are you going to have to see it before we take real change? One thing that I do fear in this process as we watch like the Senate bill and stuff is I do not want us to have one bill with some reforms and then say, oh, we're done now, we fixed that problem, right? Issues around racism are systemic and we need to be looking at them constantly, and we can't have one bill and then decide that problem's over.
People, that answer right there is why you should be supporting her for Congress. All right, my next question is moving kind of with the current events. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected millions of Americans' lives daily. Everybody's lives. And the GOP has not really been very supportive of reopening plans that follow safe and instructive guidelines. So following up with that question, what is your opinion on President Trump's and Governor Masters' reopening plans? And how do we balance the economic impact and saving lives at the same time?
Yeah, so we missed so many opportunities. We really missed the boat, and people have died for it. So, I really wish we could have tackled the pandemic differently early on. We needed widespread early testing. So this is a horrible pandemic, worse than ones of recent years, but it's not the first. We've done this, and we've done this in recent history. And the way you handle pandemics is you have a lot of testing and contact tracing very early before you get to community spread. And if you need to shut down, you do it early before community spread. And that's how you stop, that's how you keep from getting into community spread. And we missed those boats. We came into like trying to do things around the pandemic so late, we were already in community spread. And then the efforts that you take are necessarily just not going to be as effective when it's already so widespread. So now we're at a point, I mean, we cannot have everything closed forever. We're looking now, it may be even late 2021 before we have a lot of our population vaccinated and really kind of be able to move past this. We have to look at what does life look like now like this. And it is, we do have to wear masks. We do have to socially distance. We do need to stop having events that are closely packed. I don't know why that's so hard. And so do businesses still operate? Yes. Can you still go outside? Yes, but wear a mask and let's not pack people in close quarters. And that should be fairly fairly simple. And I don't know why it's become so politicized, but that's clearly what you do. We also need to make sure we keep having widespread testing. We need, especially when you have places where people are coming into contact with a lot of people, they need to be constantly tested because we need to take them out in quarantine as soon as they've been exposed. And we don't have that yet. Now we're doing it for like professional athletes, but we're not doing it for our teachers or schools. And I'm a real big believer, if you can do it for professional athletes, you can make it happen for schools. So, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And kind of a pivot here, what has it been like campaigning amidst the pandemic? It's, I mean, you know, usually during an election year, you'd have people volunteering, like we'd be out knocking doors right now, but we can't do that safely. So what has it been like for you as a candidate and your campaign to be having to campaign and deal with COVID at the same time?
Yeah, it's I have not enjoyed that aspect. I'm an extreme extrovert. I love people. I love seeing people. I love the campaign trail pre-COVID. And now the campaign trail is this. I'm on Zoom and on the phone like 11 hours a day, which we're getting it done. But I really miss seeing people in person. So from the campaign side, we actually pivoted pretty quickly, much quicker than Wilson, perhaps not shockingly, into virtual and digital space. We were doing Facebook Lives, breaking down the CARES Act and the Families First Act pretty early, Zoom events. So we are still contacting 6,000 voters a week, but we're doing it by phone banks, by text banks. We are also doing contactless canvassing, which is essentially lit drop. If you've done lit drops, that means like we're not knocking doors and having conversations, but we are leaving literature at people's houses. Because again, my number one need right now in the campaign is to make sure people know that I'm out there and that they have a choice. We have to get my name ID up somewhere 65-70%. And so we're still doing all of that direct voter contact. It just looks different. And for me, it's not as fun as face-to-face. And so that's sad, but we're gonna do the work anyway and make sure voters know who we are. So yeah, that's the way it looks.
Yeah, it's definitely the Zoom is moving to Zoom has been definitely an interesting thing, I would imagine. So these next ones kind of don't really fall under a category necessarily. They just were asked. They were tossed out there by people who filled out the form and people who texted me individually and asked me to add them. So I sent them over. So as you know, gun violence in America is still a national issue, not necessarily this year as much because we were all at our homes and away from people, but it still was prevalent in America this year. So what steps, if any, would you take or do you think should be taken to curb gun violence in our communities and nation?
Yeah, I just don't see why this is so hard. Things like background checks should be very simple. Closing the boyfriend loophole, the Charleston loophole, the gunshot loophole, there's lots of them. So, you know, I grew up in rural South Carolina around guns. I shot my first gun when I was 5. And definitely grew up as, you know, a family of gun owners, but I do not understand why politically as a nation these kind of very basic common sense things are difficult, because I don't know a single responsible gun owner that's like, no, I won't wait an extra 3 days to buy my gun so the likes of Dylan Ruth doesn't get one. Like, this doesn't make sense, right? That's the Charleston loophole. Is like, might have to wait a few extra days for that background check to come back, but it's going to keep guns out of the hands of very dangerous terrorists, domestic terrorists. Like, it's not a hard choice. And so somehow I think the NRA has just, they've gone far afield of what responsible gun owners ever were, and they have politicians in their pocket because of money, and it's not even where gun owners are. And so it's an issue that frustrates me, but I'm a very big proponent of universal background checks, of fixing things in like the Violence Against Women Act, where boyfriends who are convicted of domestic violence also don't have access to weapons. And so in favor of all of that. It should be very simple and common sense from my point of view.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So now, as you said in your introduction, you have a background in education. So I feel like this question will be, you'll give probably a really good answer for this one. I'm expecting it. And so what do you think the federal government's responsibility should be to provide an equitable, quality public education for all pre-K children through the 12th grade?
Yeah, I mean, we can do some things on funding. A lot of the equity issues are at the state level, where the basic funding of schools is at the state level based on property taxes, which is a very old arcane system and very inequitable. And especially South Carolina, we've made it worse because we have now taken personal property taxes out of that, and you need business property taxes, commercial property. Well, what does that mean for rural communities that have very few businesses? That means rural communities get no funding. And so we're seeing the disparities between the school districts in South Carolina actually increase on a rural-urban divide in a way that is really not okay. From the federal government, we do have levers we can use. We do have funding in the Elementary and Secondary Education Act that can go to schools that have students from low-income backgrounds to help equalize education there. And so that is, that's the main lever we have on equalizing funding. But we're never going to have it fair until the state does something. We can make it better at the federal level with federal money, but the state's going to have to move on that. And it's you're right. It's something I was very passionate about as a teacher. It's something I lobbied the state legislature on when I was a teacher. And they didn't want to listen to a young 20-something teacher. And as part of the reason I went to law school is I felt like I needed some credentials so someone would listen to me, because it's a problem.
It is a big problem. And it's not just in South Carolina too. That's what's bad about it, is it's nationwide. So now, as we go into these next two, I should say, they're based around the election. So as you know, in 2016, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, but Donald Trump won in the Electoral College. That was what, one of 3 times that's happened in American history. So, you know, the Electoral College has become a major issue I think it's between both parties and just America in general. So would you support legislation to abolish the Electoral College? And why would you support legislation to abolish the Electoral College?
Yeah, so it is actually going to take more than legislation. The Electoral College is part of the Constitution, so it'll take a constitutional amendment. So not only will Congress have to back that, but you will have to have a majority of the states go on board as well and pass ratifications to have that. So it's a very heavy lift. It's a very heavy lift. People should know that. This is something we've actually, because it's just kind of, you're right, with the 2016 election is when people started talking about this. I have some reservations, because when you look at the numbers, you are talking about like 10 cities deciding the presidency. And right now, one of the frustrations I have is when I talk to Democrats in South Carolina who say, why should I vote? My vote never matters. And that is a problem that's going to become extremely widespread when smaller states never matter. right? It's a thing. And it's become a bigger problem. The reason that the popular vote and electoral college have not matched more in recent history is because we've seen populations flee rural areas into urban. There's been a big shift in population. And I grew up in a rural area that always gets left out and no one cares about because there's never votes there. And so, I know what that feels like. So I have some reservations about it, but it's something that I would definitely consider, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm not sure we'll come out on that. We'll have to follow how it goes, but it's a real heavy lift. And so I tell people, be careful. You can't put too many eggs in that basket because constitutional amendments are extremely difficult to get done.
I agree wholeheartedly. So we've got about 10 minutes left on the meeting, which should wrap up just in time. But this is I think, second to last question that we have. It's going on with this election in particular. So Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away a couple of weeks ago, sadly. And, her passing was at a very unfortunate time, 45 days out from the election. And Senate Republicans, Mitch McConnell in particular, said that they would proceed in the constitutional duty of the president to fill the Supreme Court vacancy before the election, taking a completely different stance than he took in 2016 against Obama's appointee, Merrick Garland. So now, brought up in a lot of progressive movements, as well as the Democratic Party in general, has the idea of expanding the court and packing it with liberal justices has become I don't want to say a widespread thought, but a thought. And no major Democrats besides a few have come out in support of that. But my question is if Democrats win back the White House, the Senate, and keep the House, would you, if it was proposed, support expanding the Supreme Court and packing it with liberal justices?
So I think it's on the table. At this point, when you throw out, there used to be certain, kind of, for lack of a better term, I'll call gentlemen's agreements about how colleagues in the Senate and the House dealt with each other. And there was something called the Biden rule, where if we used one standard for a president, it was the standard we were going to use for the president of another party as well. There was some amount of mutual respect and rules, frankly, and procedure. This particular situation just threw the Biden rule out the window. Like, we did it, we put in Kavanaugh in the year of election, but now, even though we're like so much closer to election, we're switching. So should those kind of bigger options be on the table? Absolutely, they should. It's not something where I want to say absolutely. Like, we have got to find, as members of Congress, how we can possibly work together going forward. And we have to remember, whatever we can do, they can do too when they are in control. And, we can increase the court to 15, and they can increase the court to 30, and then we can increase the court to 45, and then they can to 60. So, like, there's got to be, like,
it can be a never-ending cycle.
So, like, thinking through these things, and but I think it should be on the table and a point of negotiation to figure out how we can possibly work together and have some rules that are not just so hyper partisan as we move forward.
Absolutely. We've got to find a way to move back to the middle and work together, because and I think the nominee of our party said it best, if we aren't able to work as Democrats and Republicans anymore, the idea of America may, start to frizzle out. So I saw we had one question in the chat. Can you see it? I think.
Oh, yeah, marijuana. So yeah, there's actually a bill in Congress on this right now. So I'm a big favor of medical marijuana. I think that's so easy because I think it's a big indicator for our opioid crisis. If we had access to medical marijuana, it could give us some real relief on the opioid crisis. It's a big deal for veterans' health care and for some of the really traumatic injuries that veterans have had. I also support decriminalizing simple possession. I think that's a crime that is highly discriminatory in enforcement, and you see a lot of racial discrimination in the enforcement of simple possession, and it's just not the best use of our law enforcement's resources. Like, we have more important crimes to deal with. So if you want to see someone who is really taking the lead on this in Congress, it's Congressman Earl Blumenauer. And he and I had a talk. His bill is what's up in Congress. We had to talk about it this week, actually. But he's got some great information on it on his site and stuff too. But yeah, I don't think criminalization of simple possession is a good use of resources. This is not, it's not worth it.
Absolutely. And another question, somebody just texted to me who wasn't able to join the meeting, but they want to watch it afterwards. They texted and they asked about the Green New Deal. As you know, climate change is an existential crisis to not just Americans, to the world. And so would you support something like the Green New Deal, or do you support an alternative plan, or maybe a hybrid of the Green New Deal and another plan?
Yeah, so I don't support the Green New Deal legislation like it's written, and there's two reasons for that. One, it's a very short visionary document with no policy. There's literally no policy, nothing to implement. It's just like, I would like a perfect world, and here are all the things in my perfect world. So that's not really getting us anywhere. The other reason is because I think climate change is a huge crisis for us right now. We have to act on it. And if we want to act on climate change, we cannot tie it to every other policy we can possibly think of that we want in one package. We'll never pass. We'll never get it. So if we are serious about climate change, we are going to take action on climate change. And, so that's why it's gone nowhere, for both of those reasons. And so we need legislation. Like, I think we can create jobs as well as start protecting our planet with some really good, basically green infrastructure stuff. I highly support that, would support that in the legislation. But yeah, that's where I am.
Absolutely. Thank you. So it doesn't look like we have any more questions in chat. So I've just got one more question to ask. And it really is to get everybody in here involved and anybody who watches afterwards. So as you know, we hold our phone banks, we hold text banks. We try our best to, help do what we can to help Democrats get elected. But can you briefly talk about how high schoolers can get involved in your campaign now or closer to the election date?
Absolutely. And Bree, can you throw the Mobilize volunteer link in there? It's on our website too. If you just click on volunteer on our website, we have activities happening almost every day of the week now. You can phone bank, you can text bank, you can do contactless canvassing where you do literature drops. There's lots of different things you can do. Signs, we have, for instance, elderly people that want signs in their yards, but we need people to deliver them. And so there's a ton of stuff you can do. You can pick whichever activity you want. We also have a digital power hour that some of you might be into. So all of those are options, and you can sign up through this volunteer link on our website for any of them that you're interested in. I also jump on the phone banks because I also call voters. And so I'll jump on Zoom with the people phone banking from time to time, where like I'm phone banking while you're phone banking, and sometimes it's fun. We play in the chat about conversations. So yeah, check us out. The Mobilize link is there in the chat for anyone who wants to sign up.
Awesome. And I will share that Mobilize link on my email that I send out after this, as well as Emily can share it on our social media. So we only have 2 minutes left, but Adair, thank you so much for joining us. On behalf of SC High School Dems and High School Dems of America, we are so thankful and grateful that you have stepped up to run for us. And we're really looking forward to getting you elected and getting you into Congress so you can do some good things for South Carolina.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for all that you do. I know it's not always easy to get in South Carolina, but like, we're going to get this thing done. It's going to be a great day for us on November 3rd. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Give a big thanks to Adair. And also that Mobilize link will be emailed out to everybody on the SC High School Dems. So I'm looking forward to getting people more involved with your campaign. Other than that, yes.
That link, Emily, it's me. All those links that Emily sent out to everyone has it by the county breakdown that I got. Yeah. Awesome. So for like canvassing and stuff.
Awesome. All right. Well, Adair, anything else you'd like to add before we go?
That's all. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was an honor to hear from you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Adair.
Bye.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.